Not him, Dad, I'm afraid of that human fighter. Part 1. The Great Arena on Planet was the largest building in the known galaxy. It could hold 5 million beings from hundreds of different worlds. Today, every seat was full. The air was thick with excitement and the smell of alien food from 1,000 different vendors. Emperor sat on his golden throne high above the arena floor. He was old now, with gray scales covering his face and tired eyes that had seen too many wars. But today he felt young again. Today was the Tournament of Worlds, and his daughter would finally be married. Princess stood beside her father. She was beautiful by any species standards. Her skin was silver like polished metal, and her eyes were deep purple like the space between stars. She had 3 hearts beating in her chest, and right now all 3 were calm. She had accepted her fate long ago. Marriage to a strong warrior would make the empire stronger. This was her duty. She had already chosen her favorite among the suitors. Lord of the Alliance was tall and graceful, with blue skin and kind eyes. His people were known for poetry and philosophy, not war, but he was skilled enough with a blade to compete in the tournament. More importantly, when he looked at, he saw her as a person, not a prize. Daughter, Emperor said, today we will find you a husband worthy of our empire. Yes, father replied. She did not mention Lord, it was not her place to choose. The tournament would decide. Below them, warriors from 17 different species gathered on the arena floor. There were the massive, covered in natural bone armor that could stop laser fire. There were the elegant with their flowing robes and curved swords. There were the whose psychic powers let them read minds and predict attacks before they happened. And then there was the humans. Noticed him immediately, though she could not say why. He walked into the arena alone, carrying nothing but a small bag over his shoulder. He wore simple clothes, gray and worn like something a worker might wear. He had no armor. He carried no visible weapons. He was small, so terribly small. The warriors towered over him like mountains over a single tree. Even they, who were not known for their size, stood a full head taller than him. Father said, her voice suddenly tight, who is that? Emperor barely glanced down. The human Earth sent him. They begged to be included in the tournament. I allowed it as a diplomatic gesture. He will be eliminated in the first round. Do not worry yourself. But could not stop looking at him. The announcer, a 4-armed being with a voice like thunder, called out the human's name. Park, representing the planet Earth. There was laughter in the arena. A few beings clapped politely, but most simply stared at the small creature with amusement or pity. Park did not seem to notice. He walked to his assigned position and set down his bag, then he looked up at the royal platform. His eyes met eyes. She felt something she had never felt before. A chill ran down her spine, starting at her neck and traveling all the way to her feet. Her 3 hearts, which had been beating calmly, suddenly began to race. The human did not bow, he did not look away. He simply looked at her, studying her face the way a scientist might study an interesting specimen. Then he smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it made grip the arm of her chair until her silver fingers ached. Father, she whispered, I do not like this. Do not like what? That human, something is wrong with him. Emperor laughed. Wrong, he is simply small and weak. The will crush him in minutes. Stop worrying about nothing. But could not stop. She had studied humans in her school years. She knew things about them that her father did not care to learn. She knew that their planet was harsh and cruel. She knew that their species had survived an asteroid that killed almost everything else on their world. She knew that they had lived through ice ages, through plagues, through wars that killed millions of their own kind. And still they spread across their planet. Still they reached for the stars. When the galactic community first discovered Earth, they thought humans would be easy to control. They were so small, so fragile, their bones broke easily, their skin tore like paper. They could not survive in vacuum for more than a minute. They needed constant food and water and sleep. But the reports that came back from Earth were strange. Humans did not behave like prey animals. They behaved like predators who had learned to wear masks. They smiled and made friends and signed treaties, but behind those smiles there was something old and hungry. They evolved as persistence hunters, one report had said. They would chase their prey for days, never stopping, never resting, until the prey simply fell down from exhaustion. They did not need to be faster or stronger. They only needed to refuse to stop. Watch Park stretch his arms and roll his shoulders. He moved like water, smooth and relaxed. He did not look nervous. He did not look scared. He looked like a man who had been in situations far worse than this and had walked away from all of them. The tournament rules were simple. Each warrior would fight in a series of one-on-one matches. The fights would continue until only one warrior remained standing. Weapons were allowed. Powers were allowed. Killing was allowed, though most matches ended with surrender. The winner would claim the hand of Princess and an alliance with the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The first round of matches was announced. The crowd roared with excitement. Park was matched against a warrior named, was enormous with arms as thick as trees and armor that had never been pierced. He had killed 14 opponents in previous tournaments. He looked at the small human and laughed so hard that the sound echoed through the arena. "Little creature," said, his voice like grinding rocks, "I will make this quick. You will feel no pain." Looked up at him way up, that was nearly 3 times his height. "That is kind of you," said. His voice was quiet, calm, almost gentle. "I will try to do the same." The crowd laughed again, even Emperor chuckled. Only Princess did not laugh. She leaned forward in her seat, her purple eyes fixed on the small human. The bell rang, the match began. Charged forward like a living tank, the ground shook with each step. He swung his massive fist, aiming to crush the human in a single blow. Was not there. He had moved to the side so quickly and smoothly that almost missed it. His fist hit empty air, the roared in confusion and swung again. Again was not there. For 10 minutes this continued, attacked with everything he had. He used his fists, his feet, his armored head. He grabbed chunks of the arena floor and threw them like missiles. He roared and raged and burned through his energy like a fire burning through wood. Simply moved, he did not attack, he did not taunt, he did not even breathe hard. He just kept moving, always one step ahead, always just out of reach. The crowd grew quiet. This was not what they expected. "What is he doing?" Emperor muttered. Waiting, whispered. She did not know how she knew this, but she knew. After 40 minutes began to slow, his movements became heavy, his breathing became rough. His armor, which had looked so strong before, now looked like a prison weighing him down. And then struck. It was one punch, just one. He aimed for a small gap in his armor where the shoulder met the chest. His fist moved faster than his eyes could follow. Well, the arena was silent. 5 million beings held their breath. The announcer's voice rang out, shaky and uncertain. "Winner, Park of Earth." Walked back to his corner and sat down. He reached into his bag and pulled out a bottle of water. He drank slowly, peacefully, as if he had just finished a gentle walk instead of defeating the most feared warrior in the army. Princess felt her 3 hearts pounding in her chest. "Father," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I am afraid of that human." Emperor stared at the arena floor, his face pale. For the first time in many years, he did not have an answer. Days had passed since the tournament began. The arena was in chaos. Every newscast in the galaxy was talking about the same thing, the human who would not die. Park should have been dead 17 times. The officials had reviewed every match, slowing down the footage, studying each frame. They could not explain what they were seeing. After defeating the warrior, had faced a fighter named Sira. They were known throughout the galaxy for their psychic powers. They could read minds. They could see the future. They could predict every attack before it happened. No one had ever defeated a in single combat without special technology. Had no technology, he had only his worn gray clothes and his simple steel sword. The match had lasted 12 minutes. For the first 11 minutes, Sira had controlled everything. She dodged attacks before he even started them. She landed blow after blow on his body. Blood ran down his face and arms. But then something strange happened, began to move in ways that made no sense. He would start to swing left, then twist to the right, then somehow end up attacking from below. His body seemed to argue with itself, changing direction mid-motion, making choices that even he did not seem to expect. Sira had screamed. She had clutched her head and fallen to her knees. The medical team later said that her psychic abilities had been overwhelmed. She could not process what she was seeing in his mind. There were too many voices, Sira had explained, her eyes still wide with terror. His brain was not one thing, it was many things fighting each other. He did not know what he was going to do until he did it. How do you fight someone who surprises himself? Had won by knockouts. The next opponent was an assassin who could turn invisible. The thought he would simply disappear and strike from behind, but had closed his eyes and listened. Humans, it turned out, had excellent hearing. They could detect tiny sounds that other species missed. The assassin's footsteps, silent to everyone else, were clear as bells to the human. 1 in 3 minutes. After that came a warrior with poisonous claws. Let himself be scratched once, just enough to understand how the poison worked. Then he modified his fighting style to keep his blood flowing fast, spreading the poison too thin to be effective while waiting for his body to process it. Humans, the medical team discovered, had unusually adaptable immune systems. 1 in 20 minutes. Princess stopped sleeping. Every night she lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about the human. Every morning she went to the arena early and watched him train. He did not train like the other warriors. They practiced formal techniques, repeated movements they had learned from masters, did something different. He ran, he climbed. He lifted heavy objects and threw them. He moved constantly, never resting, pushing his body to its limits and then pushing further. "Why does he hurt himself?" asked one of her advisors. "He trains so hard that his muscles tear, he bleeds from his feet. Why?" The advisor, an old who had studied many species, gave her a troubled look. "Human bodies are strange, Your Highness. When they damage themselves through training, they heal stronger than before. It is as if pain is a tool for them, a way to grow." "That is horrible." "Yes, it is." On the fourth day of the tournament made a decision. She summoned a human cultural to the palace. The woman's name was, she was small like all humans with long black hair and quick, intelligent eyes. "You wanted to see me, Your Highness?" asked, bowing politely. "Did not waste time, tell me about Park." His face became careful like a door closing. "What would you like to know?" "Everything. How did he become this way? Why does he fight like something that has nothing left to lose?" Was quiet for a long moment. She looked out the window at the arena in the distance. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Was born in a small town on Earth, nothing special about his childhood. He was a good student, a kind boy. He liked to read books and play games with his friends." She paused. "Then he joined the military. He was very good at it, too good maybe. They put him in a special unit, soldiers who did jobs that no one else could do." "What kind of jobs?" "The kind that governments do not talk about. The kind that happen in the dark places of the galaxy where no cameras are watching." Leaned forward, go on. 5 years ago, there was something called the incident. A human colony was attacked by hostile forces. His unit was sent to help, but the situation was worse than anyone expected. The rescue ships could not reach them. Communications were cut for 3 years and his team were trapped behind enemy lines. No supplies, no support, no hope. 3 years, whispered. She could not imagine such a thing. Soldiers were never abandoned for more than a few weeks. 3 years, confirmed. They fought every day, they ate what they could find, they slept in shifts never more than a few hours at a time. One by one they died, disease, injury, enemy attacks. In the end, only was left. How did he survive when everyone else died? Looked at with something like pity. He did not just survive, Your Highness. When the rescue ships finally came, they found walking toward them. He was carrying the bodies of his teammates, all of them. He had been carrying them for 200 miles. Felt sick, why? He said they deserved to go home. He refused to leave them behind, shook her head. The doctors who examined him later said it should have been impossible. His muscles were destroyed. His bones were cracked. His body was running on nothing but willpower. But he would not stop. He could not stop. Stopping was not something his mind knew how to do anymore. Stood up and walked to the window. Below, she could see the arena preparing for tomorrow's matches. Tomorrow would fight again. Tomorrow he would probably win again. Is he broken? Asked. Is that what makes him like this? Considered the question. Maybe, probably, but I do not think that is the right word. He is not broken, he is changed. He went through something that would have destroyed anyone else. Instead of destroying him, it made him into something new, something harder. Something dangerous. Very dangerous, but also something else, smiled sadly. After everything he went through, after losing everyone he loved, he still chose to carry them home. He still chose to honor them. That is not the choice of a monster, Your Highness. That is the choice of a man who refuses to let the darkness win. Did not find this comforting. In fact, it made her fear worse. A monster she could understand. A monster had simple desires, food, power, violence, but was not a monster. He was something more complicated. He was a man who had looked into the abyss and walked back out, forever changed but still trying to be good. That was somehow scarier. Thank you, said, you may go. Bowed and left, remained at the window, watching the sun set over the arena. Tomorrow the final rounds would begin. Lord was still in the tournament. He had fought well, using his skill and grace to defeat his opponents without serious injury. If he won the tournament, would marry him. They would have a peaceful life together. She would read his poetry and learn about his culture, and eventually maybe she would be happy. But Park was also still in the tournament, and with each match he grew stronger, not physically stronger but something else. The other fighters were beginning to fear him. They whispered his name in the corridors. They avoided his eyes in the dining hall. One of them, a proud prince, had withdrawn from the tournament rather than face him. I came here to win a bride, the prince had said, not to die for one. Closed her eyes and tried to imagine a future where she was married to the human. She saw gray corridors and cold efficiency. She saw a man who never slept, who never rested, who carried his ghosts with him wherever he went. She saw a life without warmth or softness. She opened her eyes and shook her head. No, that future would not happen. Lord would win, he had to win. But deep in her chest, all three of her hearts beat with a terrible fear. Because deep down, in a place she did not want to look at, she already knew how the tournament would end. The human would not lose. The human did not know how to lose. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. The day of the championship match arrived. The sky above was bright and clear, with 3 suns shining down on the arena. 5 million beings packed the seats and billions more watched on screens across the galaxy. This was the most watched event in 100 years. Everyone knew what was at stake. The winner would marry Princess and form an alliance with the most powerful empire in the known universe. Empires had risen and fallen for less. Lord stood on one side of the arena. He wore his traditional armor, blue and silver, light enough to allow his graceful movements. His curved sword gleamed in the sunlight. He had trained his entire life for moments like this. His fighting style had been passed down through 10,000 years of history. He had never lost a formal duel. On the other side stood Park. He wore the same worn gray clothes he had worn every day of the tournament. His simple steel sword hung at his side. It was not a special weapon. It was the kind of blade a farmer might use. Compared to his masterwork sword, it looked like a toy. Princess sat in the royal box, gripping the arms of her chair so hard that the metal bent under her fingers. Emperor sat beside her, his face calm but his eyes troubled. He had watched all of his matches. He had seen things that kept him awake at night. Father, said, her voice barely above a whisper, I wish to withdraw from the arrangement. Turned to look at her. In all her years, had never objected to any decision he made. She had always been the perfect princess, obedient and dutiful. You have never objected before, he said. I have never been afraid before. Afraid of losing, Lord. Shook her head slowly. Her purple eyes were fixed on the human below. No, Father, I am afraid of what happens if the human wins. Wanted to comfort her. He wanted to tell her that would win, that the fighting style was unbeatable, that everything would be fine, but he had seen too much. The champion crushed, the psychic broken, the assassin caught. One by one, every warrior had fallen before the small human from Earth. It is too late to stop the match, said. The laws are clear. Whatever happens, we must accept it. Nodded. She had known he would say that, but she had to try. Below, the announcer raised his 4 arms. Warriors, the final match of the Tournament of Worlds begins now. The crowd roared. The sound was so loud that it shook the walls of the arena. Lord bowed to Princess, a gesture of respect and devotion. His eyes met hers and she saw something beautiful there, hope. He believed he could win. He believed he could save her from a future she did not want. Did not bow, he simply drew his sword and waited. The bell rang, the match began. Moved first, he glided across the arena floor like water flowing over stones. His sword traced patterns in the air, beautiful and deadly. He had spent 30 years perfecting these movements. Each angle, each timing, each footstep had been calculated for maximum efficiency. Raised his sword to block. Metal met metal with a sharp ring. Sparks flew, spun and attacked from another angle, blocked again and again and again. For the first 5 minutes this continued, attacked with everything he had. His blade moved so fast that most beings in the crowd could not follow it. He struck high and low, left and right, using combinations that had never been countered in 10,000 years of combat. Blocked them all, but that was all he did. He did not attack, he did not advance. He simply stood there, absorbing the assault, his face calm and empty. Fight back, shouted, face me properly. Did not respond, he just kept blocking. Princess understood what was happening. She had watched enough of his matches to recognize his pattern. He was not fighting, he was studying him. Every attack, every movement, every tiny habit was being recorded and analyzed by that quiet human brain. He is learning, whispered. Emperor nodded grimly, I see it too. After 10 minutes began to land hits. His blade sliced across his arm, drawing blood. It cut his leg, his shoulder, his cheek. Red blood stained the gray clothes. Any other being would have been crippled by these wounds. Any other being would have fallen. Kept blocking. Why will you not die? Screamed. His voice was ragged with exhaustion and frustration. What are you? For the first time spoke. His voice was quiet, so quiet that only could hear it. But the arena's sensors picked up every word and broadcast it to the crowd. My grandmother survived a war, said. When she was 7 years old, bombs fell on her city. She hid in a hole for 3 days alone while everything burned around her. He blocked another strike. My grandfather survived a famine. For 2 years there was no food. He ate grass and bark and things I will not name. Half his village died, he did not. Another strike, more blood. My mother survived a plague. The sickness killed millions of people on our planet. She was sick for 6 months. The doctors said she would die, she did not. Attacked again, but his movements were slower now. He was getting tired. My father survived a collapsed mine. He was trapped underground for 40 days. He drank water from the rocks and ate insects. When they dug him out, he was half mad from the darkness, but he was alive. Raised his sword and for the first time stepped forward. I survived things I cannot talk about, things that took everything from me, things that broke every part of who I used to be. He struck, barely blocked in time. Your ancestors evolved on a gentle world, Lord, a world of poetry and philosophy and peaceful gardens. They became refined and graceful and beautiful. Another strike stumbled backward. My ancestors evolved in hell. Every day was a fight for survival. Every generation faced extinction. We did not become refined, we became stubborn. We became creatures who refused to stop no matter what. Eyes met. In them, the Lord saw something ancient and terrible. Something that had been forged in fire and blood over millions of years. The difference between us is not training, Lord. The difference is that I have already died 100 times. I just keep forgetting to stop. The final exchange lasted 4 seconds. Did not aim for Spotty, he aimed for his sword. More specifically, he aimed for a tiny point in the handle where the metal was weakest. It was a point that should have been invisible, impossible to find, but had been watching for 3 days. He had calculated the resonance frequency of every weapon in the tournament. He knew exactly where to strike. His cheap steel sword hits masterwork blade at precisely the right angle. The blade shattered. Pieces of metal flew through the air like broken stars, stared at his empty hands in disbelief. His sword, the sword that had been in his family for 5,000 years, was gone. Placed the point of his own sword against throat. The arena was silent. Yield said it was not a question. Lord looked up at the royal box. He saw Princess, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. He had wanted to save her. He had wanted to be her hero, but he understood now that some things were beyond his power. I yield, he whispered. The announcer's voice rang out, shaky and uncertain. Winner of the Tournament of Worlds, Park of Earth. The crowd did not cheer. The crowd did not boo. The crowd simply sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Emperor rose slowly from his throne. His hands were shaking. By ancient law, he was required to give his daughter to the victor. This human, this small and terrifying creature, had earned the right to claim Princess as his bride. Felt her 3 hearts stop. Time seemed to freeze. This was it. This was the moment she had dreaded since the tournament began. She looked down at Park, standing alone in the center of the arena, covered in blood that was not his enemy's. She waited for him to claim his prize. He looked up at her, their eyes met. And then he said the words that changed everything. The arena was completely silent. 5 million beings held their breath, waiting to see what the human would do. On screens across the galaxy, billions more watched. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The champion would claim his prize. Park stood in the center of the arena, his body covered in wounds, his cheap sword still in his hand. Blood dripped from his arms and legs, forming small red pools on the ground. He looked up at the royal platform where Princess sat frozen in terror. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. I do not want hers. The silence shattered, the crowd exploded into noise. Beings shouted and screamed and argued. Some laughed, some cried, some simply stared in disbelief. Emperor gripped the railing of the royal box so hard that his claws left marks in the metal. His face twisted with confusion and anger. You dare refuse, he roared. His voice echoed across the arena, silencing the crowd. You dare insult the Empire, you dare insult my daughter. Did not flinch, he looked at the Emperor with steady eyes. With respect, Your Majesty, he said, I have not insulted anyone. I have simply declined a prize I never wanted. Then why did you fight? Demanded. Why did you enter this tournament if not to win the princess? Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried across the arena, reaching every ear. I did not come here for a bride. I came here because Earth needed to send a message. He turned slowly, looking at the crowds around him. He looked at the warriors, the nobles, the psychics, the representatives of 100 different species. He looked at all of them and they felt his gaze like a weight on their souls. When humanity first reached the stars, we were excited. We had dreamed of this moment for thousands of years. We built our ships and flew into the darkness, hoping to find friends. His voice grew harder. Instead, we found a galaxy that saw us as prey. Every species we met looked at us and saw something small and weak. Something to be used, something to be conquered. Princess found herself leaning forward, listening. Earth has no great army. We have no ancient technology. We have no psychic powers or natural armor or any of the things that make other species strong. Raised his sword and pointed it at the crowd. but we have something else. We have 10,000 years of surviving when we should have died. We have a stubbornness that other species cannot understand. We have the ability to adapt, to learn, to keep fighting long after logic says we should give up. He lowered his sword. I entered this tournament to show the galaxy what humanity can do. I entered to prove that we are not prey, we are not victims, we are survivors. He looked back up at Emperor. I have made my point. Every species in this arena saw a human defeat their greatest warriors. That message will spread across the galaxy. Earth will no longer be seen as weak. The Emperor stared at him for a long moment. His anger was still there, but something else was growing alongside it. Something that might have been respect. "And what do you want in place of my daughter?" asked. "You have earned a prize, the law is clear." "I want an alliance," said, "the same alliance that marriage would have provided, trade rights, mutual defense agreements, a partnership between Earth and the Empire." He paused. "I want what my people need to survive in this galaxy, nothing more, nothing less." "You would trade a princess for paperwork." "I would trade a life of quiet misery for my people's safety." "Yes." Princess felt something strange in her chest. At first, she thought it was relief. The terror that had gripped her for days was finally releasing. She was not going to be married to this frightening human, she was free. But there was something else mixed with the relief, something unexpected. She was offended. "Wait," she heard herself say, her voice surprised her. She had not planned to speak, but the words came anyway. "You fought through 17 matches, you nearly died a dozen times, you broke warriors who had never been defeated, and you did all of this for a political message." Looked up at her for a moment, something flickered in his dark eyes, something almost like warmth. "Princess," he said, "you deserve someone who wants you for you, not as a prize, not as a political tool, not as a trophy to be won in a tournament." He gestured toward Lord, who was still kneeling on the arena floor, holding the pieces of his broken sword. "You have been staring at him with actual affection for 3 days. You think I did not notice?" His head snapped up, his eyes went wide. "I am a soldier," continued. "Reading people is how I stay alive. I saw the way you looked at him. I saw the way he looked at you. Whatever this tournament was supposed to be, whatever your father intended, the truth is simple. You already made your choice." Felt her face flush silver. She opened her mouth to deny it, to protest, to say something proper and dignified, but nothing came out. Turned back to the Emperor. "I claim my victory, but I claim it as a debt, not a bride. Grant Earth the alliance it needs, and we will be your partners for as long as the stars burn. Deny us and—" He smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. "Well, you have seen what one human can do. Earth has 8 billion more." The threat hung in the air, light and almost playful, but absolutely serious. Emperor stared at the small human for a long time. He thought about all the warriors who had fallen. He thought about the champion crushed. He thought about the psychic broken. He thought about his own generals who had watched the tournament with growing horror. He thought about 8 billion more. Finally, he laughed. It was a real laugh, deep and genuine, the laugh of a man who had just been outmaneuvered by someone he had underestimated. "Humans," he said, shaking his head, "I was warned that you were strange. My advisors told me not to allow Earth into the tournament. They said humans were unpredictable. They said humans were dangerous." He smiled. They were right. He stood up and raised his arms to the crowd. "The champion has made his claim. In place of my daughter's hand, Earth shall receive a full alliance with the Empire, trade, defense, partnership." He looked down at, "You have fought well, human. You have earned your prize." The crowd erupted into cheers. This time the sound was different. It was not the confused silence from before. It was genuine excitement. They had witnessed something historic. They had seen a new power rise. Bowed to the Emperor, then he bowed to Princess. Then he turned and walked toward the arena exit. Lord scrambled to his feet. He looked at, his blue face full of hope and confusion. Did he just? Nodded slowly. He gave us a chance. He gave us a future." Looked at the retreating human, the man who had defeated him, the man who had shattered his sword and his pride, the man who had then, for no reason that made sense, set both of them free. "Why would he do that?" asked. Thought about everything she had learned about Park. The persistence hunter who never stopped chasing, the soldier who had survived 3 years of hell, the man who had carried his dead teammates 200 miles because they deserved to go home. "Because he knows what it is like to lose everything," she said softly, "and he did not want us to lose what we might have." She watched disappear through the arena gate. Part of her was glad to see him go. Part of her wanted to run after him and demand more answers. But she did neither. She simply sat in her chair next to her father and watched the sun set over the arena. Tomorrow the alliance would be signed, Lord would begin his formal courtship, life would go on. But Princess knew that she would never forget the human who had terrified her, amazed her, and then set her free. She would never forget Park. And she would never stop wondering what kind of people could produce someone like him. 3 months had passed since the tournament. The galaxy was different now. Everyone talked about Earth, about humans, about the small creatures who had proven themselves to be much more than anyone expected. Trade ships moved freely between Earth and space. Human merchants walked the streets of alien cities. Diplomats visited the blue planet that had produced such a remarkable warrior. The alliance was strong and both sides were benefiting. Princess was happy. Lord had courted her properly with poetry and gifts and long walks through the palace gardens. Their engagement had been announced to great celebration. The wedding would be held in 6 months and the entire galaxy was invited. But even in her happiness could not stop thinking about the human. She had tried to find him. She had sent messages through diplomatic channels. She had asked the Earth ambassador about him, but Park had disappeared. After the tournament, he had returned to Earth and no one seemed to know where he went. Then, 3 months and 4 days after the tournament, received a message. The human was on the diplomatic station preparing to return to Earth. He had come to witness the signing of some new trade agreements. He would be leaving the next day. Did not tell anyone where she was going. She took a small shuttle from the palace and flew to the station herself. It was not proper for a princess to travel alone. It was not safe, but she did not care. She found him on the observation deck staring out at the stars. He looked different somehow. In the arena he had seemed larger than life, a force of nature that could not be stopped. Now without the lights and the blood in the crowds he looked smaller, tired, human. "You are leaving tomorrow," said. Did not turn around. "Yes, back to Earth, I have people to visit." Walked closer, she could see his reflection in the glass of the viewport. His face was calm but his eyes were far away, looking at something she could not see. "The ones who did not walk out with you," she said quietly, "from the mission." He was silent for a long moment. "You did your research." "I wanted to understand." She moved to stand beside him, looking out at the same stars he was watching. "I wanted to understand why I was afraid of you. It was not the violence. I have seen violence before. My father was a general before he was emperor. I watched battles when I was a child." "Then what was it?" Considered the question carefully. She had been thinking about it for 3 months, turning it over in her mind like a puzzle with too many pieces. "You are what humanity becomes when everything soft is stripped away," she said. "When survival is the only thing that matters for so long that you forget there were ever other options. You are the final product of millions of years of suffering." She looked at his reflection. "But that is not the scary part." Finally turned to face her, his dark eyes were curious. "No. No, the scary part is that you still chose kindness," shook her head. "You could have taken everything the tournament offered, power, status, me, you had earned it all, no one would have blamed you for claiming your prize." "But I did not." "But you did not, instead you fought for something abstract, something larger than yourself, the future of your species." She looked directly into his eyes. "And then you gave a stranger her freedom because you noticed she was in love with someone else. You could have ignored it, you could have pretended not to see, but you chose to see, you chose to act." Was quiet, his face did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something that might have been vulnerability. "I was afraid of you too," he said. Blinked me. "All of you, the beautiful princess in the tower, the ancient empire, the galaxy full of wonders." He smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. "Humans spent so long looking at the stars, dreaming of what was out there. We wrote stories about alien worlds. We made movies about space adventures. We imagined meeting beings from other planets." He turned back to the viewport, looking out at the endless darkness. "Now we are here, we are actually here walking among the stars, and it is terrifying," he laughed softly. "We are children stumbling into a room full of giants. Every species we meet is older than us, wiser than us, more powerful than us, and we have to figure out how to survive among them." "You did not fight like a child," said. "No, I fought like a human. We do that when we are scared." He glanced at her. "When a human is afraid, they do not freeze, they do not surrender, they fight harder, they become more dangerous, not less. It is how we survived on Earth. It is how we will survive out here." Thought about this, she thought about all the reports she had read about humanity. The wars, the plagues, the disasters, the way humans kept getting knocked down and kept getting back up. "Will your people ever stop being afraid?" she asked. Considered the question. "Maybe, someday, when we have proven ourselves, when the galaxy sees us as equals instead of prey," he shrugged. "Or maybe not, maybe fear is part of what makes us human, maybe it keeps us sharp." They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars turn slowly outside the viewport. "I hope you find peace," said finally, "whatever that looks like for someone like you." Laughed, it was a genuine sound. warm and unexpected, so different from the cold warrior she had seen in the arena. "I will let you know if I figure it out," he said. He reached out his hand, had learned about this human gesture. It was a sign of respect, of equals meeting as equals. She took his hand. His grip was firm but gentle. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." "Thank your poet for me," said. "Tell him I am sorry about his sword. It was a beautiful weapon." "He has already forgiven you," he said. "The best lessons are the ones that hurt." "Smart man, you chose well." He released her hand and picked up a small bag from the floor. The same worn bag he had carried into the arena. He walked toward the exit of the observation deck. And called. He stopped and looked back. "The galaxy is watching humanity now. They are afraid of you, afraid of what you might become." She paused. "What will you do with that fear?" Smiled. It was not the cold smile from the arena. It was something softer, something almost hopeful. "We will try to be worthy of it," he said. "We will try to be the kind of species that deserves respect, not just fear. We will make mistakes. We will stumble. We will probably do terrible things and wonderful things in equal measure." He shrugged. "We are human, that is what we do." He walked through the door and was gone. Stood alone on the observation deck, watching the stars. She thought about everything she had seen and learned in the past 3 months. She thought about the small blue planet that had produced such remarkable creatures. She thought about Park, carrying his dead friends 200 miles through enemy territory because they deserved to go home. She was no longer afraid of humans, but she understood now why her instincts had screamed at her from the first moment she saw in the arena. Humans were not dangerous because they were violent. Many species were violent. Humans were not dangerous because they were strong. Many species were stronger. Humans were dangerous because they could be anything. They could be violent or peaceful, cruel or kind, selfish or selfless. They could survive anything and become anything. They could look into the darkness and walk back out, changed but not broken. And that was what made them truly terrifying. Not what they were, but what they could choose to become. The galaxy was vast and full of predators, the with their armor, the with their minds, the with their empire. But the small, fragile creatures from the little blue planet might just be the most formidable of them all. Because they never stopped adapting. They never stopped learning. And they never, ever gave up. Smiled and turned away from the viewport. She had a wedding to plan. And somewhere out among the stars, 8 billion humans were watching and waiting, ready to prove themselves to a galaxy that had underestimated them. She almost felt sorry for anyone who stood in their way. Almost.